All right, and here we go. And we just skipped the whole 6 days of recording, the whole consciousness Kagamunga. It all got extorted till today. And today's the first line of the rulership. So, quite something to left that consciousness not to work. So, we're going to go through that as much as we can today and see how far we go. The right angle cross of consciousness 1 3 profile. There are many, many crosses that are wonderful for 1 3. This is one of them. This is a personality that deeply needs to investigate the nature of being. Their third line unconscious is finding things that don't work, actually stimulate the cross of consciousness. This is one of the few crosses where being a 3 is actually, well, not so much fun, but it's embraced. In other words, they don't have enough time because of their mental interest to really dwell on the fact that something didn't work. Their mind will immediately go into the process of trying to find out why the pattern failed or trying to find out why the accident experience failed. In other words, their mind is going to explore that at another level. So they're not going to be absorbed in the third line process other than it's reflecting their personal life. In other words, like all 1-3s, they can have a very difficult time in terms of how they present themselves to the other. It's lower trigon. It's not very easy for them to be able to put themselves out to the other. The natural not self-alignment of guilt and shame because of your failures with the third line unconscious leads them to feel like they're not willing to be secure in confrontation with others. And because of the cross of conscious, children can be deeply, deeply absorbed on the mental plane and appear to be quite uncomfortable to their parents and can be a certain concern of them. However, we're dealing with civilization and we're dealing with concretization, and the whole thing about the 35 is that it's geared toward the experience and the experience only, which means that if you have a 1-3 on this cross and it's a little manifesto lookout, it's going to be roaring around you, roaring out there. Remember, this is about concretizing, so it's all about concretizing your experience. And when you're young, you don't really understand the reference points of reflection. You just sound. So one of the things to keep in mind about children that come in on the cross of consciousness is that the tendency is to think of them as mental. And you're right, most of the time that's really true. But it's not true here. And the only thing mental about this is that they may bang their head. They are racing towards something. This is something to really understand about the difference a quarter brings to the quarter of a cross. When you put the cross onto duality, the quarter of duality, you end up with huge head trips about partnerships and the other, and blah, blah, blah. When you stick it into the mental zone of initiation, it goes on and on. Here it's just to do something. The doing becomes everything. When you're on the cross of consciousness and you know somebody who's a son in the 35, who the same cross as you, they're spooky. They seem so much more unstable. When you meet crosses of consciousness, they tend to be up in their heads. It's only natural for them to be there, but they don't seem physically unstable. But when you meet 35s, there's a frequency to them. It's almost like they don't have enough time to even be able to breathe, let alone reflect, let alone grasp what experience is all about so they can be defeated or satisfied. The 1-4. If you're a 1-4, the way you're going to understand the necessity for experience is by the models that are around you. If you're a male child and you have a father that appears to take physical risk, then you're going to want to take physical risk. You're going to want to be able to base yourself on the same platform. When a father tells stories that you about your youth, you begin to hear about what he considered the essential experience and this laid a foundation. For example, my generation, which was generation that experienced with drugs, the moment you have one of these fathers or mothers idealizing that experience as a developmental reality and you have a 1-4 child, that 1-4 child is always going to feel like it doesn't do, that it's not getting an essential experience. And of course, that can be very obviously. So one of the things always to keep in mind about 1-4 children, particularly 1-4, but also the 4-1, this whole recognition of their cultural background and this recognition of the parents as being very powerful models. If you have a mother that was very, very prudish and religious as a child and describes experience related to that, her daughter is going to take that as a platform as a 1-4. It may not in fact be her life at all. And it's difficult to these beings to do anything about it. Remember that where the 1-3 will investigate to back up its anarchy, in other words, to find something wrong, it will investigate the wrongness. The 1-4 doesn't do that. It uses its own gift to substantiate the platform. In other words, it's only looking at being able to articulate in depth what its platform is. We have an expression for that, following on your father's footsteps. And you have to see that if you're a parent or a one for, you have to be very careful what is described as essential experience. And again, we have certain advantages in our day and age. This can tune into the media, and the media is going to give them examples of all kinds of coming of age experiences. But we all know that some of the most important experiences we have in our lives are those experiences that we have just before purity and just after purity. And the things that we were driven to the experience plane is to be able to prove ourselves. There isn't a culture in the world that doesn't put children around the age of 12 or 13 or 14 through some kind of maturation ceremony. All of that is built into this essential experience that you need in order to be able to come to a place ultimately of maturity. So you have to be very, very careful. Everything about all this right angle will be deeply influenced by the experience of the parents. Conscious people and the experiments of the parents. Well, not easy.